By popular demand, here it is. You asked for it. It's the Cinewhoop Buyer's Guide, the ultimate showdown. I'm going to take all of these on the table right here, the most popular ones. We're going to do a weigh-in, price check. We're going to do some flights, some noise testing, and an overall best out of all of these in the bunch. We're going to take a look at the Eachine Viswa, the Reptile 149, the HDLRC Veyron, as well as the iFly Green Hornet and the Bumblebee, as well as the Diatone, Taycan, and the Flywoo Chasers. They're all on the table, so let's go ahead and get started with the first out of the bunch. So we'll start off with the nicest one out of the bunch. That is a Diatone Taycan. If your money is no object, this is the one to get, up to $400 for the DJI version, but they do have a 4S and 6S option available, and around a 3 to 5 minute flight time on a 4S 1300, as well as a 158mm wheelbase. Now we're going to start out with the noise test on this one, and I have the dialogue up top. That is the sound level recorded in Final Cut Pro, and we used an in-studio analyzer for that. Let's get the Taycan weight, 318 grams without the battery, 481 grams with a 4S 1300. Let's get it up in the air, guys, and take it out for a spin. One of the things that I did like about this one, in my original review, this was one of the few that would handle the best power loop out of all of them. It seemed to be the most solid, probably one of the most durable. It has aircraft aluminum camera mount in the very front. It has really nice foam bumpers all the way around and a nice thick carbon frame. It is one of the heavier ones in the bunch, but I feel like it has a really solid feel. When you buy this one and you open up the box, it's a really nice experience. It's almost like getting yourself an iPad. But let's talk about flight characteristic. Flight characteristic on this one, like I said before, it will do mild freestyle. So that's better than the rest of these in the group. A lot of them have tumble and washout whenever you try to do a flip or anything with a high mounted 360 camera on them, or even a GoPro on the front will throw it off. But what I like the most about this one, as well as being able to get in there and get close in proximity with this quad, was no problem. It has a really nice track. If you're going to do some cinematic filming, and that's what most of these are for, use it in stability mode and you can come home with some stuff like this. Because right now I'm flying in stability mode and I'm kind of flying it like a big outdoor whoop. It's what these guys are, and they're meant to go in straight lines and sort of really easy, flowy type of maneuvers. You don't want to get real crazy with the maneuvers because they will kind of freak out the flight controller and tumble. But really nice, true straight lines. And look at that, I can change my angle with the Insta360 It has keyframing inside the phone. I can change this camera view at any time just by adding dragging my finger on the screen and then making a keyframe. It's really, really cool software. Way better than the GoPro software editor that I've used before, that I used for years. And since I got the Insta360 camera, guys, I have 2 of the 1Rs now, and I haven't touched my GoPro since I've been using these dual lens 360 cameras. They're just awesome. But I'm happy with the footage that these bring home. I think there's a lot of possibility for any of these. It just depends on how much you want to spend, and this one happens to be the more expensive of the bunch, but again, in my opinion, probably the nicest flyer and the nicest quality out of all of them. Now it's time for the iFly Green Hornet. This is also a crowd favorite. It comes in around $179 to $208 for the 6S version. 4 6S options is kind of nice, and up to a 5-minute flight time, 3 minutes if you're really kind of cranking on the throttle. And it has a 142mm wheelbase and a Cadex EOS 2 cameras on this one. Not my favorite, so you're getting a little bit cheaper quad out of this one, but again, I would probably replace that camera. The noise test seemed to do good for the Green Hornet, and 73 average to 84 decibel max on the punch out. Not bad. And the weigh-in went extremely well, 263 grams. 4S 1300s get me up to 429 grams. You're going to be over 500 grams most likely with most action cameras out there. But let's go ahead and talk about the flight characteristic of the Green Hornet. Now, the first time I spooled this one up and started flying it, I definitely felt the weight difference versus something like the Diatone Taycan. It's a lot lighter feeling in the air, and it still seems to perform decent with my 360 camera on top. I have it a little bit elevated, so that changes the CG. I also have it sitting up front, so it makes it even harder for the flight controller to be able to handle things. And there was just the slightest bit of jello here. As you go higher and higher, that's where you start to see your jello on some of these drones. Really down low when you're flying in acro and you're just kind of moving fast, you can't really see it quite as easily. But up top is where you can see the jello. And it did some flips and rolls. It did not power loop. It did a washout on the power loop. The Diatone Taycan was the only one that could power loop the trees in the parking lot right here. But again, these are not really made for freestyle. They're pretty much for cinema style filming. But I have to say that I like the power system on here. The motors, they're really smooth. It is a very predictable quad, and this is one of the reasons why I think these quads are so popular, is because the foam bumpers, number one. Number two, they fly great. They're like a big Navy ship. I've talked about this characteristic before. If you fly a 5-inch race quad and you go to a Cinewhoop to try to fly a Cinewhoop, it's a completely different feeling. And me, I'm always punchy on the throttle, and I want to really go fast. If I ride a motorcycle, that's what I want to do. If I'm on a dirt bike, I want to just punch it. And this one, it makes me slow down and enjoy the ride, which is nice. And now I have a friend who is flying his Radian, and one of my favorite things to do is follow an RC airplane or sailplane. It's just the most enjoyable thing. And this plane slows way down, so I'm able to keep up with him here in this flight, which is nice. But again, the 1R, I'm gonna show you guys, this footage right here is from the singular lens, and this is not the 360 lens. And I compared it to my GoPro lens. The GoPro Hero is right here, and this is the difference between that singular lens on the 360 camera that is a modular snap-on lens, which is really nice. And I feel like the GoPro Hero has a little more problems with the light and dark adjustment. So you'll get like a super noticeable light and dark transition as you turn away from the sun or into the sun. And the Insta360 is not quite as noticeable as the GoPro Hero. And you can change up some settings in your Hero to make it better. But again, I like the colors a little bit more on the Insta360. And the Green Hornet's still doing really, really good. A reliable, solid, durable, and predictable quad. Flies really, really nice, and I came home with some really sweet footage with this one. And again, I had zero problems with the Green Hornet. I didn't have any parts break or anything snap on it. And really nice in close proximity flyer. If you want to get down low to the ground and slow way down, you can go some pretty amazing places. And right here, we're using some hyperflow stabilization on here as well. So it almost looks like we have a mechanical gimbal on here, even though this camera is hard mounted to the quad. And the fun thing about a Cinewhoop is you can push through grass, no problem. You can sort of push through branches at times. I've bounced off branches, fence, whatever. Now it's time for the iFlight Bumblebee, $298 to $445 for the DJI version. 4 and 6S options available up to around 4-minute flight time. This one has a little bigger motors, as you noticed on here, and 142mm wheelbase. With the bigger motors, this one was a little bit noisier. The decibel analyzer averaged around 74 to 85 max on the punch out on the iFlight Bumblebee. Also one of the crowd favorites out there. Let's check out the weight, 284 grams, and the 4S 1300. That's going to get us up to 446 grams. Now for some flying with the Bumblebee. And this is out at the tree farm. I have my Insta360 1R on there with a dual 360 lens. And what a fantastic day this was to fly. It's such a nice day to fly. And again, I'm able to adjust the keyframes and spin the camera around where I want. But look what kind of proximity you're able to get with the Bumblebee. It's a really precise flying Cinewhoop. Really, really nice. My only pet peeve about the Bumblebee is that with the larger motors, I do have more power, but at the same time, I eat the battery up quicker. And that up high shot looks great. You can see Mount Hood up in the distance there. That's around 11,000 feet. I'll give you a little bird's eye view of the drone itself. And if you're going to mount a 360 camera on there, guys, go ahead and mount it right directly center on the quad. That's my best experience for if you want to just flip the camera back around and show people what the quad looks like. It's a really awesome view. People really enjoy seeing that. And the higher up you get it, the less distortion on your quad you'll see. This camera could be just a little bit higher to show us more of the quad. But again, you can really see the ghost branches on here. The camera on here is nice. You're paying a little more money, but you're able to get away with stuff like this. And look at that, I just grabbed that tree branch and you could see that perspective from the 360 camera that I totally had it and I was able to bounce out. And that's the beauty of these sort of soft bumpers on here. You can get away with the craziest things and still fly back home without damage, which is great. So my rating for the Bumblebee was fairly high, only minus some points for the larger motors out of the bunch and the shortest flight time, but very nice components. Now we're going to take a look at the HDLRC Veyron. So 4 to 6S options on that. It is the cheaper one of the bunch and one of the lighter ones, around a 4 to 5 minute flight time on this little guy, and 136mm wheelbase, one of the smaller wheelbases. It also has the Cadex Ratel camera on here, which is one of my faves. Now for the noise test with the Veyron, I felt like the Veyron, it was a little bit quieter, 73 average to 84 max on that punch out. And the weight, this is where they get everybody else, 248 grams, one of the lightest 3-inch Cinewhoops on the planet, and 413 grams with the 4S 1300. And man, did I have a lot of fun with this quad. I did have some damage. I have some damage to report in this flight test. I hit the kill switch on my transmitter and went straight down, upside down, hit the camera on the ground, and when it did, it flexed the top frame and it snapped that top frame. The top frame is only 2mm thick, so to be able to get theirs lighter than everybody else's out there, they didn't do a 3mm top plate, they did a 2mm top plate, which cost them a little bit of a durability factor here. So if you're not top mounting your camera, if you're putting it on a TPU mount in the front, it comes along with it. You can put your GoPro up front and not have to worry about snapping the frame. It's much less likely if you're going to snap the frame if you're running a GoPro in the front. But I see a little bit more vibration in this particular video than some of the other ones, and I'm not 100% sure why. It could be that we have an issue with the top part of the frame being cracked. It could be adding more jello to this video. But again, very nice, stable, and amazing proximity flyer. I mean, you can really get in there. And this is all analog, guys. And when I dip down in between these steel posts right here, pretty much completely lose any type of analog video feed for a moment there. And the best thing to do is punch out, go straight up, get your analog video back to your goggles as quick as you can when you go blind. But very smooth. And this is one to consider if you're on a budget. Consider this one. This one is more fragile though. Again, you can see up in the front of the quad right there, it's missing also one of the PLA inserts inside the duct. That also broke out during the crash. So if you have a really hard crash, you're going to lose those PLA inserts. They're going to break. Hopefully HDLRC will share those with the community and you guys can print a new one and pop it in there. But I'm still flying it without it. It didn't stop me from being able to fly it. So it's not the end of the day for the Veyron. But probably one of the better deals out there for a 3-inch Cinewhoop in my opinion. The Veyron got a pretty high mark on the channel. Now it's time for my friend Flywoo Chasers 269. And the 4 and 6S version, you have a DJI version up around $400, but you do have around a 5-minute max flight time on here. 138mm wheelbase on this one's a little bit smaller. Now the noise test on this one, it did pretty good, but we do have a 73 to 82 max average decibel rating on here, 82 being the max where we did a punch out on the 4S 1300. And you can hear that here in a second. There's the punch out. Now let's put this one on the scale, 321 grams. This one feels really solid, by the way, in your hands. It's a very well-made quad. 488 grams with the 4S 1300. Now with a GoPro, that's going to get us up to 599. And most of these 3-inch Cinewhoops will get you over 500 grams with a GoPro on there. And that's the GoPro Hero 7. So now we're going to take off out of my backpack. And the cool thing about this one was that, unfortunately, I couldn't get the camera on the top. But this gave us a different perspective. And a couple of you guys have been asking me to mount the 360 camera on the bottom of the quad. Some guys saying it would give better CG. I just think it's a really cool perspective. Kind of different there. You can move the camera around again at any angle you want in a 360 degree view on the bottom. Keyframe it, change the camera angle. And that's what I'm doing in all these videos you guys watch with the 360 video. I'm actually changing the camera angle and making keyframes in the app. When I am finished making a video, I open up the app, I look at the video, and I can use my finger, move the camera around in the 360 space, and then click on the timeline and it adds a keyframe. And it'll hold that keyframe until you spin it again and make another keyframe. It's really cool. So there's a keyframe example where I did a 180 pan all the way around. And you can see Mount Hood out there again. And the Flywood Chasers, it is not a freestyle quad, but I felt like this one got really good video. And the DJI version that I have, if you haven't flown DJI yet, invest in it because it's absolutely worth the money. It's kind of like buying a new laptop or buying yourself a nice tablet. Once you spend the money, you kind of forget that you spent it and you just enjoy the experience of owning it. But again, if you're on a budget, just get the analog version. It's a little bit cheaper. But check out this proximity, man. We are getting in there with the Flywood Chaser. Really nice. And part of that is DJI, because I can go places with DJI that I can't go with analog because, number one, I can see more. And look at this. I can even skirt through these metal poles. And those metal poles with analog are almost impossible to see. I would never take a diagonal direction through those poles with analog. I would be picking this quad up in the field. But again, isn't that cool how the camera doesn't move, but you can see the quad moving around like it's like some kind of mechanical gimbal. And that is the beauty of stabilization on the 1R camera. And this camera is around $475, but in my opinion, it's worth every single penny. The GoPro Max is maybe a little more expensive than that, but also weighs 30 grams more. And in my opinion as well, the software on the Insta360 is way better. It exports quicker. The keyframing is super simple. I could have a third grader making keyframes and exporting videos out of that software. But really getting in there with the Flywood Chasers, man. Some very impressive flying from this quad. Again, I think this one's worth every penny. The only pet peeve about this one is that it's hard to work on. $143. One of my crowd favorites as well. Reptile Cloud 149, 4S only, 5 to 6 minute flight time on this little guy, and 149 millimeter wheelbase. And I gotta tell you, the noise test on this one, this is one of the quieter quads of the bunch. This had around a 68 decibel average, and the punch out was a little noisier, but 84 max, that's pretty much what the rest of them have. But 68 average is really smooth sounding. It doesn't have a real high kV motor on here. And let's get a weigh in, 232 grams. One of the lightest quads again out of the bunch. A 4S 1300, 399 grams. Now, this is fun to me because this quad is so much cheaper than the rest of them. Yes, it does have plastic ducts. You don't have the foam bumpers. You know, if you're on a budget, get this one and make yourself some foam bumpers. People are doing that. It is something that I have seen out there in the community. You can formulate your own foam bumpers. And if you break these plastic ducts, they're probably a couple of dollars to replace. They're not super expensive. And the good news is, guys, that I did smack this one down a few times, and it hasn't broken any of the ducts yet. I can't say that would be true for a concrete crash, but a concrete crash might even break some of the other ones in the bunch. And I have to say that the generic camera that's on here, this does not have any type of Cadex camera or run cam. It doesn't have a really high-end camera on there, but the camera looks good. It is an analog camera. It runs on 5.8, and it's very acceptable. And so much so that I'm able to navigate the tree farm down there, which is really awesome. I felt like this quad could do everything that all of the other quads could do for almost half the price. So that's why this one go back and watch the review on the Cloud 149 on my channel. And I think I might have even given this one 2 thumbs up because of just how cheap it was and how fun it was to fly. The motors are really smooth. It sounds great in the air. When this one takes off, even with the Insta360 1R camera on there, it's really, really smooth sounding. It doesn't have a lot of funny flight characteristics to it. The flight controller is actually tuned really well, and this is the stock generic tune that I'm flying today. No problems. Again, this one's not a freestyle quad. I couldn't power loop this one. It had washout. But this one has some extreme precision and control. Flying down even close to these little mini Christmas trees. Kind of getting in there. Not bad at all. Now I'm really going to get in there. And this is the coolest thing about Cinewhoop. And that is really nice. And any of these would be something that you could take and do a fly through for a real estate type of video. If you flew through a house with an Insta360 1R camera on there and did some 360 video for a client, they would be pretty impressed with this type of video through a really nice house. Because you can change the camera angle at any time. It's mind-boggling. And now I really wanted to see if I could get away with some sort of uncharted proximity flying. And I haven't really flown through this section before, but I was able to navigate it quite well. And I'm not even sure which way to go here. But you can see this is a lot of fun because, again, I'm bringing home video like I've never brought home before. I mean, that's just cool. Just really cool. Again, playing around with those keyframes is just my favorite new thing to do. It's kind of giving me a new perspective on flying and kind of a new passion for videography. Look at that. Again, for the price of this one, bringing home this kind of video in comparison to your $400 Cinewhoops, this one can do anything a $400 Cinewhoop can do. You can put any type of camera on here you want. You don't have to spend $475 on a 360 camera. You can put a GoPro on here. You can put a run cam on here. You could put a GoPro Session. It does come with a GoPro style mount. And this one had some of the longer flight time. And the reason that is because we have some lower KV motors. They didn't go super high KV. This is not a race quad. And it's benefiting from that. So this one's probably one of my most favorites because you guys know I like cheap stuff, especially if I can get away with spending less and come home with some really great footage and a quad that's enjoyable to fly. So this one's absolutely every bit worth every penny that you want to spend on it. Yeah, it's one of my favorites. This one, I love it. It's great. So the Eachine Viswa is also in this bunch, $249, 3 to 4S options, and 2.5-inch props. It has around a 6-minute flight time, one of the longer flight times, even though it's smaller, 130 millimeter wheelbase. This is the one to buy if you want the quietest one that will carry a GoPro or a 360 camera. 67 decibel average up to 74 max here for the punch out. Way quieter than the 3-inch Cinewhoop. So if you're the guy that flies in a lot of parks, get this one if you don't want to bother people. It's also the one that's going to be under 250 grams. Check that out. 215 grams. 2 thumbs up, guys. Now, I'm going to show you some of my original footage that I took with this one, and this is just flying around the neighborhood because everybody's on lockdown right now, so I couldn't go anywhere. But again, we're rocking that 360 camera on there, and I'm able to change keyframes. And I was amazed that this little guy would get 6 minutes flight time. 2.5-inch props, quieter, under 250 grams. When you add a camera on there, it's going to be more than 250 grams, of course. But you can fly it without the camera on there and record from your DJI goggles. And this one does have CADX, the CADX Vista on there. This is a DJI digital FPV system, the smaller one. And in this video, I'm also using the new DJI controller, and I also tested the penetration of the DJI controller with the CADX Vista versus like an XM Plus, a standard XM Plus, and I fail-safed in the same spot where I flew through with the CADX Vista. So that's good news. The CADX Vista has better penetration than your standard XM Plus for Taranis receivers. Really nice. And that's a fact. I have video of both. I'll have to show you guys that sometime on the channel. But I was really happy to find out that I was able to push this one behind a whole group of trees, way out in that tree field, that the XM Plus couldn't do. But again, this one is bringing home just as good of video production and quality, and probably less jello than some of the other ones. Some of the other ones had really noticeable jello, and this one's fairly smooth. My one pet peeve about this one might be that the prop guards that come along with it are plastic prop guards, but they're also probably about $1 a piece, maybe 50 cents a piece. They're really, really cheap plastic stuff. Eachine parts are really, really cheap. If you had to buy a new frame, it might be like $5. Very, very cheap. There goes my neighbor checking out the drone. But this one can also go places that the other ones couldn't. It's got a lot smaller profile, and this one's more like a neighborhood flyer. I actually wouldn't fly my 3-inch Cinewhoops in my neighborhood just because they're so noisy. And up and down the sidewalk. No one's on the sidewalks right now, so it's a nice time to fly. And now back out to the tree farm for some quick battery out here. I didn't have a lot of batteries out here this day, but I wanted to share a little bit of the footage with you and show you how narrow of a spot I can get with this quad. And it's pretty fast out in this field. I'm impressed with how fast this little guy is. And again, getting in there nice and close in and being able to get out. So let's go ahead now and let's summarize what you guys just saw, and let's break this down from the bottom to the top of the echelon for 3-inch Cinewhoops. Now, I have to say that each one of these, again, brings different characteristics, quality levels, and now you should have a better idea of what those quality levels are versus some of the cheaper stuff out there. And the advantage of buying something cheaper is that it's cheaper to replace the parts, easier to work on. If you did have a total annihilation of the quad, it wouldn't be as big a loss as something that costs you $450. If you're not on a budget, by all means, buy the best one in the pile. It might be the Diatone Taycan. It's one of my favorites. It looks beautiful. It's got great design. It also has a DJI option available in 4 and 6S. So a very beautiful quad to look at. Nothing on here broke. I am missing a bolt on the very front, but that's because I was working on it and didn't put the bolt back on. The green Hornet, in my opinion, is probably the best economy buy as far as mid-range goes, and one of the best flyers as well. And I had to say that the iFlight Bumblebee did not disappoint me. Great power, but shorter flight time. So that might be one caveat there for the Bumblebee. Now, the Flywoo Chasers, this one was extremely good. Comes home with great video, has DJI options 4 and 6S. And this one is a little bit hard to work on because it has probably like 30 screws on the top of the frame. Just a little harder to work on. One of my favorites also, it's only a 2.5 inch, but the Viswhoop, it will carry any type of sport camera out there, and under $250 for DJI is not bad. And the best of the bunch as far as the economy goes is the Cloud 149, crowd favorite for guys on a budget, and it will do anything any of these other Cinewhoops will do. So an extremely good buy, really awesome. So there you have it, guys. Hopefully you appreciate all my work that I put into this video with the sound testing. All the specs are in there for you guys to check out. Flight footage, everything. It's all in this video. So share it with the friends, guys. I'm Justin Davis, and I'll see you on the next one.